Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the UNS Endurance's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The bridge was a cocoon of dim lights and flickering holoscreens, the crew's faces etched with the quiet strain of long-haul duty. Ilara's dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, her eyes, sharp, unyielding, scanning the tactical display. She'd led this ragtag exploration team for 5 years, ever since the Alliance brass had deemed her too reckless for frontline skirmishes. Reckless? Maybe. But out here on the fringe, where stars bled into the void, caution was just another word for surrender. Beside her, Lieutenant Kai Ren hunched over the navigation console, his fingers dancing across the interface with the precision of a surgeon. Kai was the steady one, the engineer who'd patched more hull breaches than Ilara cared to count. His wiry frame leaned forward, brow furrowed under a mop of unruly black hair. "Sensors are picking up something anomalous ahead, Cap," he said, voice low and even as if announcing the weather. "Not a ship, not debris. Energy signatures off the charts, could be a relic field or worse." Ilara nodded, her jaw tightening. The Endurance was a mid-tier cruiser, built for scouting uncharted sectors, not tangling with whatever the galaxy threw at them. Her crew was small, just Kai, the cautious medic Dr. Lena Torres, and the wiry comms specialist Jax Harlan, who could crack any encryption with a grin and a quip. For souls against the unknown, that was the Alliance way, or so the recruiters promised. "How far?" she asked, leaning in. 10 light minutes and closing," Kai replied, tapping a projection that bloomed into a 3-dimensional map. Swirls of purple nebula gas framed a central anomaly, pulsing like a wound in space. "If we adjust course we skirt it easy. But regs say we log it first." Jax snorted from his station across the bridge, his lanky form sprawled in the chair like he owned it. "Regs? Out here? That's Alliance speak for, don't poke the bear, humans." His voice carried that signature Harlan wit, dry as Martian dust, but his eyes, alert, calculating, betrayed the humor. Jax was the wild card, the one who'd grown up hacking corporate nets on Luna before enlisting. He patched into the comms array, filters humming. No signals bouncing back. Whatever it is, it's quiet. Too quiet. Dr. Lena Torres emerged from the medbay hatch, her steps measured, tablet in hand. She was the cautious heart of the team, with silver-streaked hair and a gaze that missed nothing. "Vital signs all green," she announced, though her tone held an undercurrent of worry. "But if that's a Xeno artifact, we should suit up protocols. Last thing we need is another biohazard quarantine like Vega Prime." Ilara waited, the ship drifting through the nebula's edge, tendrils of gas brushing the shields with faint crackles. The mission was simple. Map the outer rim, report anomalies, keep humanity's flag waving in the stars. But something about this pulled at her, that itch for discovery, the grit that had gotten her this far. "Log it, Kai. Jax, run a deep scan. Lena, prep the away team gear just in case. We're not turning tail yet." The scan fed back in waves, data streaming across screens. Kai's console beeped sharply. "Cap, it's not a relic. It's structured. Like a beacon but ancient. Readings suggest it's broadcasting on frequencies we haven't cracked. Pre-Alliance tech, maybe even pre-human." Ilara stood, the chair creaking under her. The nebula's glow cast long shadows, turning the bridge into a stage for decisions yet unmade. Human. The word hung, improbable but insistent. Out here the galaxy was vast and indifferent, dotted with alien empires that viewed Terrans as upstarts, curiosities at best. But if it was human? Jax's grin faded as his panel lit up. "Incoming transmission. Weak, garbled, but it's in English. Old English, like from the archives." The bridge fell silent, save for the engine's steady thrum. Ilara's pulse quickened, a spark of something fierce igniting in her chest. "Play it." Static crackled, then a voice emerged, distorted but unmistakably human, male, resolute, edged with desperation. "This is the last broadcast from the Odyssey. To any who hear, the swarm comes. They listen to strength, not pleas. Humanity spoke once, and the universe listened forever. Do not." The signal cut, swallowed by interference. The anomaly pulsed brighter on the display as if awakening. Kai glanced up, eyes wide. Swarm? That's myth, extinct xenoplague from the old wars. Or it's real, Ilara said, her voice steady despite the chill racing down her spine. She straightened, resolve hardening like alloy. Helm, hold course. We're going in. The crew exchanged looks, doubt, excitement, the raw edge of camaraderie forged in the void. Whatever waited, they'd face it together, humans to the core. The dim hum of the colony ship's engines vibrated through the bulkheads, a constant reminder that they were adrift in the void, far from any star's forgiving light. Ilara gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles pale against the worn metal, as she scanned the readouts for the third time that shift. The air recyclers wheezed faintly, pulling in the stale scent of sweat and recycled oxygen, but she ignored it, focusing on the flickering anomaly ahead, a rogue asteroid field, denser than any simulation had predicted. "Captain, it's shifting," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Reyes leaned over her shoulder, his broad frame casting a shadow across the screen. He was the cautious one, always double-checking vectors before committing to a burn, but today his jaw was set tighter than usual. "Options?" he asked, not looking away from the display. The field loomed in the holographic projection, rocks tumbling in lazy chaos, each one a potential hull breacher if they misjudged the gap. Ilara tapped a sequence, pulling up evasion patterns. "We could slingshot around the outer edge, use the gravity assist from that gas giant behind us. Risky, but it saves fuel. Straight through is suicide without better scanners." Reyes nodded slowly, rubbing the stubble on his chin. "Fuel's what we're short on anyway. Kale, what do you think?" He glanced back at the engineer, who was sprawled in the jump seat, fiddling with a diagnostic tool. Kale looked up, his eyes sharp behind grease-smudged lenses. Witty as ever, even under pressure, but his humor had an edge now, honed by weeks of rationing. "Straight through? I'd rather kiss a plasma vent. Slingshot it is, but we'll need to tweak the thrusters. Those rocks are kicking up dust that could gum up the intakes." The ship groaned as they adjusted course, the inertial dampeners straining against the pull. Ilara felt the subtle shift, like the vessel holding its breath. Outside the viewport, the stars streaked faintly, but the asteroid field grew, a jagged swarm blotting out the distant nebula's glow. As they edged closer, a proximity alert blared, sharper than expected. One rock, larger than the rest, veered unpredictably, drawn by some unseen gravitational tug. Reyes swore under his breath. "Evasive now." Ilara's hands flew across the controls, firing lateral jets in a burst that rattled her teeth. The ship shuddered, dodging by meters, but the near miss sent a shiver through the frame. In the aftermath, Kale was already on his feet, toolkit in hand. "That was too close. I'm heading to the engine bay, check for microfractures." Reyes clapped his shoulder. "Make it quick. We're not out yet." Alone in the bridge, Ilara watched the field recede, her pulse still hammering. The slingshot maneuver had worked, but the fuel gauge dipped lower, a silent accusation. They were 3 souls against the black, and every choice carved deeper into their dwindling reserves. She wondered, not for the first time, if the universe was testing them, or simply indifferent. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the console edge, her knuckles whitening against the hum of the bridge. The stars blurred past the viewport in erratic streaks, the Endeavor's engine straining under the improvised thrust. Beside her, Dr. Kai Ren hunched over the sensor array, his fingers dancing across holographic displays, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. "The rift's signature is stabilizing," he muttered, voice tight. "But if we push any harder, we'll tear the hull." From the engineering station, Lieutenant Mira Singh shot back without looking up from her diagnostics. "Stabilizing? That's your good news? We've got debris fields closing in. Those xenodrones are adapting faster than we can reroute power." Her tone carried the edge of someone who jury-rigged half the ship's systems from scrap, her dark braid swinging as she yanked a panel open. Ilara's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of their desperate gambit. 2 days ago, the Endeavor had stumbled into this uncharted nebula, drawn by a faint signal that promised alliance with the elusive Zorith collective. Instead, they'd triggered a defensive swarm, ancient automated sentinels, relics of a long-forgotten war, now hunting anything that moved. Their first evasion had cost them the shuttle bay and half the forward shields. the second, a crew member lost to vacuum. Now, with the nebula's gravitational eddies pulling them toward the core anomaly, options dwindled. Options? Ilara said aloud, forcing calm into her voice. She was the anchor, the one who turned grit into survival. Kai, can we mask our emissions? Make us look like one of theirs. Kai paused, eyes flicking to the waveform pulsing on his screen, a jagged echo of the drone's own energy signatures. Theoretically. But it'd mean venting plasma through the auxiliary ports. Risky, could overload the core if the timing's off by milliseconds. Mira snorted, sparks flying from her tools. Risky? We're already dancing on the edge. Do it. I'll compensate from down here. Ilara nodded, her decision settling like a weight. Initiate. And prep the message beacon. If this works, we slip through. If not. She trailed off, the unspoken hanging heavy. The Endeavor becomes another ghost in the void. As Kai keyed the sequence, the ship shuddered, a low groan rippling through the deck plates. Alarms blared briefly, then silenced under Myra's swift overrides. The viewport stars shifted, the pursuing drone signatures flickering on the tactical overlay. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, then the nebula's glow intensified, the anomaly ahead yawning like a maw. They're buying it, Kai whispered, disbelief cracking his caution. But Ilara's gaze fixed on a new alert. The rift wasn't just a gateway. It pulsed with something alive, a chorus of voices in the static, waiting. Elena gripped the console edge, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared in staccato bursts. The nebulous tendrils clawed at the hull, each pulse of ionized gas sapping the engine's power like a slow bleed. Marco wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers dancing over the diagnostic panel, but the readouts only mocked him, core temperature spiking, shields flickering like a dying flame. "Talk to me, Marco," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Lila hovered behind them, her tablet clutched like a shield, eyes darting between the viewport and the data streams. He didn't look up. It's the flux coils. The nebula's messing with the magnetic fields, reversing polarity every few seconds. If we push the engines harder, we'll fry the whole system. We're down to 20% thrust, cap drifting like a leaf in a storm. The viewport framed the chaos outside, swirling purples and electric blues, a graveyard of shattered asteroids caught in the gas cloud's grip. Their mission had been simple: scout the outer rim for habitable signals, relay back to the fleet. But the nebula had other plans, swallowing their probes one by one, and now it hungered for the Odyssey itself. Lila stepped forward, her caution etched in the furrow of her brow. We could vent the auxiliary plasma to stabilize the coils. It's risky, lose too much, and we're blind without sensors. But it buys time to recalibrate. Elena nodded, weighing the cost. Time was their enemy. The fleet waited light years back, counting on fresh data to reroute from the encroaching void storm. One wrong call, and they'd be the cautionary tale in the next briefing. Do it. Marco prepped the vents. Lila monitored the fields, flag any anomalies. Marco's laugh was sharp, cutting through the din. Venting plasma into a nebula? That's like spitting into a hurricane. But hey, human's gonna human. He slapped the override switch, and a low rumble shook the deck as the vents hissed open. Blue fire streaked from the hull, illuminating the cabin in fleeting glows. For a moment it worked. The alarms quieted to a murmur, thrust stabilizing at 30%. Elena allowed herself a breath, plotting a shallow arc out of the densest clouds. But then Lila's tablet chimed, a warning tone that sliced the fragile calm. "Reversal incoming," she said, voice tight. "Stronger this time." The vents destabilizing the outer layers, the ship bucked violently, lights dimming as power surged and failed. Marco cursed, yanking levers in a frantic rhythm. "Coils are overloading. We need to seal the vents, now." Elena hit the emergency seal, but it was too late. A secondary pulse from the nebula slammed into them, the hull groaning under the assault. Sparks erupted from the panel, and Marco jerked back, singed fingers pressed to his side. The Odyssey spun lazily, momentum lost, adrift deeper into the heart of the storm. Lila's face paled as she scanned the new trajectory. "We're heading straight for the core. If we don't correct in the next 5 minutes, the gravitational shear will tear us apart." Elena straightened, ignoring the acrid smoke curling through the air. Her mind raced. Standard protocols were failing, the nebula adapting like a living thing. They needed something unorthodox, a spark of that human grit the aliens back home always marveled at. Marco, can we jury-rig the auxiliary thrusters to the main coils? Crossfeed the power? He blinked through the haze, a grin cracking his pain. Reverse engineer the reversal? That's mad science, Cap. But yeah, I think we can. As they dove into the repairs, tools clattering amid the alerts, Elena glanced at the viewport. The nebula's core loomed, a maw of raw energy, promising oblivion. But in the face of it, her crew moved with purpose. Hands steady, voices overlapping in urgent harmony. They weren't done speaking yet. Captain Elara Voss gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white against the humming metal. The bridge of the Endeavour felt smaller than ever, the air thick with the scent of overheated circuits and recycled oxygen. Outside the viewport, the nebula swirled in angry violets and crimsons, its tendrils lashing at the ship's weakened shields like living flames. "Status, Reyes," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Lieutenant Marcus Reyes wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers flying over the flickering holographic display. The wiry engineer, always the one with a quip ready, looked uncharacteristically grim. "Shields at 20%, Cap. That last pulse from the core fried half the emitters. We're holding, but if another wave hits..." He trailed off, glancing at the third figure in the dim light. Dr. Lena Karov, the xenobiologist, paced behind them, her sharp eyes darting between the readouts and the viewport. Cautious by nature, she clutched a data slate like a shield, her braids swinging with each step. "The Krell ship's still trailing us. Their scans are probing deeper now, they're learning our weaknesses faster than we can adapt." Elara nodded, forcing her mind to focus. The Krell, those hulking cephalopod-like aliens from the Outer Rim, had ambushed their diplomatic envoy 3 jumps ago. What started as a routine first contact had spiraled into a chase through this unstable nebula, their vessel's organic tech regenerating faster than the Endeavour's human ingenuity could counter. The stakes were clear. The artifact they'd recovered, an ancient beacon pulsing with unknown energy, could rewrite galactic alliances, but losing it meant humanity's voice in the stars might be silenced before it was truly heard. "Options?" Elara asked, turning to Reyes. The early plan to outmaneuver the Krell with a slingshot around the nebula's dense pockets had backfired spectacularly. The gravitational shear had damaged their engines, leaving them limping. Reyes hesitated, then pulled up a schematic. "We vent plasma from the auxiliary thrusters, create a false heat signature to draw them off. Buys us time to reroute power to the warp coil. Risky though. One wrong burst and we light up like a supernova." Lena stopped pacing, her cautious demeanor cracking into resolve. "And the artifact? It's destabilizing in the hold. If we push the engines too hard, the vibrations could trigger it prematurely." Elara waited, the nebula's glow casting shadows across her face. The artifact had spoken once already, in a burst of coherent signals that reached every relay in the sector, humanity's unintended declaration. But the Krell wanted it silenced, their empire built on controlled silence. "Do it," she decided. Reyes prepped the vents. Lena monitored the artifact's field. "We adapt or we die out here." Reyes moved with practiced speed, his hands a blur as he initiated the sequence. Alarms blared softly in the background, a rhythmic pulse matching Elara's heartbeat. Through the viewport, the Krell ship loomed larger, its bioluminescent hull pulsing with predatory intent. The first vent fired, a brilliant arc of plasma blooming into the void, mimicking a failing drive signature. The Krell veered toward it, their massive form eclipsing a swath of stars. Elara held her breath, the bridge silent save for the ship's groans. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, a new alert pierced the calm, the artifact's energy spiking not from vibrations but resonance with the nebula's core. Lena's eyes widened. "It's amplifying. The signal, it's broadcasting again." Elara's pulse raced. Not just a beacon but a chorus, humanity's grit echoing through the storm. The Krell hesitated, their pursuit faltering as the waves hit. But the cost was immediate. The Endeavour's hull shuddered, microfractures spiderwebbing across the bulkheads. They had bought time, but the nebula closed in, hungry and unforgiving. The air recyclers hummed erratically, pulling in the metallic tang of overheating circuits. Kai was already elbow-deep in the access panel, his face smeared with grease, muttering calculations under his breath. If we reroute the auxiliary power through the grav plates, we might buy another hour, he said, not looking up. His voice carried that familiar lilt, half joke, half defiance, as if the universe's indifference was just another puzzle to mock. Mara paced the cramped bridge, her boots thudding against the deck like a metronome of doubt. Another hour? That's not a fix, Kai, it's kicking the can. The O2 levels are dropping faster than projected. She shot Elena a glance, her eyes sharp behind the flickering holograph. Cautious as ever, Mara had argued against this detour through the nebula from the start, citing sensor ghosts and fuel margins. Now, with the engines cold and the nebula's ionized haze jamming every comms burst, her warnings felt like prophecies. Elena straightened, forcing calm into her limbs. The view screen showed nothing but swirling violet clouds, a graveyard of stellar dust that had snared their vessel like a fisher's net. They were 3 weeks from the nearest relay, the colony on Epsilon 7, counting on their cargo, seeds, meds, the fragile threads of human expansion. Losing the ship meant losing more than supplies, it meant admitting defeat to the stars. We adapt, she said, her tone steady, the word an anchor in the rising panic. Kai, make it work. Mara scanned for any weak points in the interference. If we can't call for help, we punch through ourselves. Kai yanked a conduit free, sparks dancing like fireflies across his gloves. He grinned through the sweat beading on his forehead. Punch through? With what, our bare hands and optimism? Remind me why I signed up for this suicide run. But his fingers flew, splicing wires with the precision of a surgeon. Elena watched him, remembering the first time they'd met. Him cracking wise during a drill, turning fear into fuel. It was that spark she needed now, the human knack for turning scraps into salvation. The ship groaned as the nebulous tendrils tugged harder, a low vibration rattling the bulkheads. Mara's console beeped urgently, she leaned in, brow furrowing. Got something? A rift, maybe? Electromagnetic weak spot about 2 clicks out. But navigating blind? One wrong vector and we're paced. Her voice cracked on the last word, caution warring with the pull of necessity. Elena nodded, mapping it in her mind. A gamble, yes, but standing still was death by inches. Plot the course, Elena ordered, sliding into the pilot's seat. The controls felt alien under her hands, sluggish without full power. Kai sealed the panel with a triumphant slap. Recyclers stabilized for now. Go time, Captain. The engines coughed to life, a reluctant roar against the void. Elena eased the throttle forward, the ship lurching into the haze. Purple vapors parted like reluctant curtains, revealing glimpses of jagged plasma storms. Heart pounding, she adjusted, feeling the pull of the rift like a siren's call. Then the first backfire hit. Alarms wailed anew as a surge feedback through the jury-rigged lines. Lights dimmed and Kai cursed, diving back into the panel. Overload. It's frying the relays. Mara grabbed a handhold, her face paling. Abort, Elena, now. But Elena held course, teeth gritted. The rift loomed on the screen, a tear in the chaos promising escape. Inches from disaster, she coaxed the ship through, the deck shuddering as they broke free. Silence fell, broken only by heavy breaths. They emerged into clear space, stars sharp and unforgiving. Kai slumped against the wall, wiping his brow. Well, that was fun. Remind me to invent better luck next time. Mara checked the readouts, a tentative smile cracking her reserve. We're out. But the damage? We'll limp to Epsilon at half speed. 2 months minimum. Elena exhaled, the weight settling like an old friend. Victory but scarred, engines strained, supplies thinner. The universe had tested them and they'd answered with grit, but the cost lingered in every strained breath, every flickering light. Captain Alara Voss gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening against the humming metal. The bridge of the UNS Endurance felt smaller than ever, the air thick with the scent of recycled oxygen and the faint tang of overheating circuits. Outside the viewport, the nebula swirled in lazy violets and indigos, but it offered no comfort, only a reminder of how far they were from any rescue. "Status, Ramirez," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Ramirez, ever the cautious one, hunched over his station, fingers flying across the holographic display. His brow furrowed, a habit that made him look older than his 32 years. "Shields at 40%, Captain. That last pulse from the anomaly fried half our auxiliary systems. We're blind on THE starboard sensors." He glanced up, his dark eyes meeting hers with a mix of worry and resolve. "If another wave hits, we might not hold." Beside her, Dr. Lena Kaur leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, her sharp wit subdued by exhaustion. The xenobiologist's usually impeccable braid had come loose, strands framing her face like weary banners. "We should have listened to the probes," she muttered, not for the first time. But no, humanity's grit means charging in blind. Elara shot her a look, but there was no heat in it. Lena's barbs were her way of coping, a shield against the fear they all felt. The anomaly, a rippling tear in spacetime discovered on the edge of uncharted space, had drawn them here. What started as a routine survey had turned into a fight for survival when it began emitting waves of exotic energy, disrupting everything from comms to gravity fields. The first plan had failed spectacularly. A probe swarmed to map the tier's edges, only for the anomaly to swallow them whole, spitting back garbled data that hinted at something alive within. Now, with the ship limping, they had one shot left, a jury-rigged emitter to stabilize the rift long enough for a scan. "Prep the emitter," Elara ordered, pushing off the console. Her boots magnetized to the deck with a soft click, the artificial gravity flickering just enough to unsettle her stomach. "Ramirez, route power from life support if you have to." Lena, double-check the containment fields. "We can't afford another surge." Ramirez nodded, his cautious nature kicking in as he rerouted flows with meticulous care. "Life support's already strained, Cap. If we dip below 80%, we'll start losing Atmo in the lower decks." "Then make it count," Elara replied, her bravery a quiet fire that steadied the room. She moved to the viewport, staring into the nebula's glow. The anomaly pulsed again, a distant heartbeat that sent vibrations through the hull. Alarms blared softly, then silenced under Ramirez's quick taps. Lena activated her tablet, holographic schematics blooming in the air. "Fields are nominal, but the energy signature inside, it's not random. Patterns almost like a language. If we can sync the emitter." The ship lurched. Red lights flooded the bridge as another wave slammed into them, stronger this time. Consoles sparked, and Elara braced against the shuddering deck. "Report." "Emitters charging, but the waves interfering." Ramirez shouted over the din. His hands blurred on the controls, sweat beading on his forehead. The ship groaned, a deep metallic whine that echoed their fragility. Lena stumbled forward, grabbing the console for support. "It's adapting. The anomaly's reacting to us, like it's testing." Elara's mind raced. The initial plan to blast it with stabilizing frequencies was backfiring. The rift was growing, tendrils of distorted space reaching toward the Endurance like curious fingers. If they didn't adapt, the ship would be pulled in, crew and all. "Abort the blast," she decided, voice cutting through the chaos. "Switch to modulation." "Ramirez, modulate the emitter to mimic those patterns Lena found. Make it a dialogue, not a shout." He hesitated, caution warring with trust. "That could draw it closer." "Do it," Lena urged, her wit flashing through. "Or we're all fancy space dust." Ramirez complied, his fingers dancing. The emitter hummed to life, not with a brute force pulse, but a rhythmic cadence echoing the anomaly's whispers. The bridge fell silent save for the soft throb of the machinery. Outside, the nebula's colors shifted, the rift's edges blurring as if listening. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then, a response, a gentle tug on the shields, not destructive but probing. Elara held her breath, the weight of the moment pressing down. This wasn't just survival, it was contact, the kind that could rewrite everything humanity knew. But the pull intensified, the ship creaking under the strain. "It's engaging," Lena whispered, eyes wide. "But if we can't control it?" Elara straightened, resolve hardening. "We will. Hold steady." The cost was already mounting, power reserves draining, the lower decks growing colder by the minute. One wrong note in this cosmic conversation, and the universe might claim them forever. Elena gripped the console edge as the bridge shuddered again, the hum of failing stabilizers vibrating through her boots. Sparks danced from an overhead panel, casting erratic shadows across Marcus's focused face. He muttered under his breath, fingers flying over the jury-rigged interface, coaxing life back into the sensor array. "Come on, you stubborn beast," he said, voice laced with that familiar wry edge. "We've got company inbound, and I'd rather not greet them with our hull as a welcome mat." Kira's voice crackled over the intercom from engineering, sharp and clipped. "Shields at 30%, Captain." That last pulse from their jammer fried half the relays. "If we push the engines harder, we risk a cascade failure. Whole ship's power grid could go dark." She paused, the underlying caution in her tone evident even through the static. Elena could picture her down there, sleeves rolled up, tools in hand, weighing every variable like a chess master against an unseen opponent. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the encroaching Vexery cruisers, sleek, predatory shapes slicing through the nebula's glow like knives through silk. Their blockade had tightened since the failed negotiation on Epsilon Prime, turning what was meant to be a diplomatic relay into a desperate evasion. Humanity's first true voice in the galactic chorus, the broadcast Elena had authorized, still echoed in the logs. A plea for alliance, backed by unyielding resolve. But the Vexery, with their rigid code of dominance, saw it as weakness. Now they hunted the Aurora to silence the echo before it spread. "Options?" Elena asked, straightening her posture, the weight of command settling like an old friend. She scanned the readouts, mind racing through contingencies. The nebula's ion storms could mask their signature, but only if they timed it right, too soon, and they'd blind their own NAV systems. Marcus leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "We could vent plasma from the auxiliary ports, make it look like we're venting drive core. Bias a feint toward the asteroid field. Risky, but it plays to their paranoia. They'll think we're crippled and desperate." Kira's response came swift. "And if they call the bluff? We're sitting ducks. Captain, we need to hail them again by time. Show them we're not the primitives they think." Elena shook her head, though neither could see it. Arguing now would fracture them, and they couldn't afford fractures. No. They've ignored every channel since the broadcast. This is about proving the words weren't empty. She tapped the comm, pulling Kira into the loop. "Marcus's planet is. Kira, prep the vents on my mark. We'll slingshot through the outer rim, use the gravity well to shake any tails." The ship groaned as they adjusted course, the nebulous tendrils swirling closer, a canvas of violet and crimson that hid both peril and promise. Marcus initiated the sequence, and a plume of superheated gas erupted from the Aurora's side, blooming like a false distress signal. On the screen, the lead Vexery vessel hesitated, its formation rippling as scans probed the deception. For a heartbeat, silence reigned on the bridge, broken only by the rhythmic beep of incoming data. Then alarms wailed, pursuit vectors locking in. "They've seen through it," Marcus said, already pivoting to the next hack. "Adjusting shields to forward arc, Kira. Give me everything you've got on the stabilizers." Down in engineering, Kira slammed a panel shut, rerouting power with hands that trembled not from fear, but fury at the machine's betrayal. "Stabilizers online. Barely. But, Captain, if we hit that gravity well too hot, the hull plating warps. We're talking structural integrity at critical." Elena nodded to herself, the decision crystallizing. "Then we hit it smart. Marcus, plot a microjump vector. Use the nebula's interference to mask our warp signature. It's uncharted, but it'll get us inside their net." As the Aurora dove, the Vexery fire lanced past, grazing the shields in a blaze of energy that lit the bridge like dawn. Elena held her breath, the ship's frame protesting with metallic screams. In that plunge, she glimpsed the asteroid field's jagged spires emerging from the haze. Refuge or ruin, it was their gamble now. The broadcast's words lingered in her mind. "We speak not from strength alone, but from the will to endure. If they survive this, the universe would hear it again louder." Elena gripped the console's edge, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms wailed in staccato bursts. The void outside the viewport swirled with debris, shards of the ancient relay station glinting like shattered teeth against the nebula's crimson glow. Jax hunched over the flickering holographic display, his fingers dancing across the jury-rigged interface, sweat beading on his brow despite the recycled air's chill. "Power surge incoming," he muttered, voice tight but laced with that familiar edge of defiance. "If we don't reroute the core now, this whole rig's gonna light up like a supernova." Mira stood a pace back, her arms crossed, eyes darting between the readouts and the sealed bulkhead door. The alien envoy, Kale, hovered silently nearby, its iridescent scales pulsing with restrained anxiety, a subtle shift from the steady blue to flickering amber. They'd come this far chasing the echo signal, humanity's one defiant broadcast from centuries past, the message that had bent the galaxy's ear and forged uneasy alliances. But now, trapped in the station's decaying heart, the signal source mocked them with silence. Elena nodded sharply. "Do it. Override the safeties." Jax's hands blurred. Sparks erupted from the panel, casting jagged shadows across his face. The alarms peaked, then dipped to a low thrum as the surge crested. For a heartbeat, the hologram stabilized, revealing a lattice of data streams, whispers of the original transmission, encoded in human grit and unyielding hope. "Got it?" Jax breathed, a grin cracking his tension. "The echo's intact. We just need to amplify it through the array." But Myra's gaze sharpened on the secondary feed. "Wait. Structural integrity's dropping. The debris field's compressing the hull. We triggered a cascade." The ship groaned, a deep metallic shudder rippling through the deck. Kale's scales flared red, its telepathic hum buzzing in their minds. Asterisk, the void awakens. "Your words stirred it." Asterisk, Elena spun toward the viewport. Beyond the glass, the nebula churned, tendrils of dark matter coiling like awakened serpents. The relay station, once a beacon of human audacity, now birthed something vengeful, a remnant of the silence humanity had shattered long ago. "Evacuate the array," she ordered, slamming the comms. "Jax, seal the core." "Mira, plot a burn trajectory, anything to shake this off." Jax cursed under his breath, yanking conduits free. Wires snapped like brittle bones, and the hologram flickered out, plunging the bridge into dim emergency red. Myra's fingers flew over her station, but the ship's engines coughed, starved from the power drain. Kale glided forward, its form elongating in the low light. "The echo demands a voice," asterisk it projected, urgency threading the thought. "One must stay to guide it." Asterisk Elena's jaw set. No speeches, no heroes in isolation, that wasn't their way. "We all guide it." "Jax, boost the auxiliary thrusters with whatever you've got left." He shot her a look, half admiration, half exasperation. "You're gonna owe me a fleet for this, Cap." With a final twist, he fused the makeshift bypass and the engines roared back to life, raw and unsteady. The ship lurched free of the station's embrace, debris pummeling the shields in a hail of fury. Myra's plot held, veering them into the nebulous fringes, but the cost etched itself in the readouts. Hull breaches venting atmosphere, the core's amplifiers fried beyond repair. As the void's tendrils receded, Elena leaned back, breath ragged. The echo lingered in their logs, fragmented but fierce, a human whisper that had once commanded stars. Now it carried their scars too, a testament to the price of speaking out. But the galaxy listened still, and in the quiet that followed, Kale's scales softened to a thoughtful green. "Your ingenuity binds us," asterisk it hummed. "Yet the silence hungers for more." Asterisk Elena met its gaze, resolve hardening. They weren't done broadcasting. Not yet. The dim glow of the emergency lights cast long shadows across the bridge of the Endeavor, turning the once pristine consoles into jagged silhouettes. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from fear, though there was plenty of that, but from the strain of holding the ship together with sheer will. The hull groaned under the assault of the void storm, a relic of the galaxy's ancient fury that no one had mapped until now. Her team, what was left of it, huddled nearby. Dr. Kai Ren, the cautious engineer whose hands trembled as he patched failing systems, and Lieutenant Mira Solis, the witty scout whose quick tongue had kept morale from shattering entirely. "Power's holding at 15%, Kai muttered, his voice barely audible over the wail of alarms. He jabbed at a flickering panel, rerouting what little energy remained from life support to the inertial dampeners. The ship bucked again, a violent shudder that sent tools skittering across the deck. Elena felt it in her bones, the reminder that they were one microfracture away from becoming debris. Mira leaned against a bulkhead, her sharp eyes scanning the viewport where swirling nebulae clawed at the stars. 15%? That's optimistic. Feels more like we're running on prayers and spite. She forced a grin, but it didn't reach her eyes. Earlier plans had crumbled, their attempt to slingshot around the storm's edge had only drawn them deeper, the gravitational eddies twisting like living things. Now resources dwindled, oxygen recyclers sputtering, food synthesizers offline, and the calm silent since the first pulse hit. Elena straightened, ignoring the ache in her back from hours unyielding. Prayers won't get us home, but spite might. Kai, what's the status on the auxiliary core? She kept her tone steady, an anchor in the chaos, drawing from the grit that had carried humanity through worse. Colony collapses, first contacts gone sour. This storm, born of some cosmic scar from the universe's birth, tested them like nothing else. Losing the Endeavor meant more than their lives. It meant the fragile alliance with the Verdani fleet, hanging by the thread of this diplomatic run, would fray into war. Kai wiped his brow, fingers smudged with coolant. Core's viable, but integrating it means manual overrides. One wrong sequence and we vent atmosphere. His caution was his strength, the voice that had saved them from reckless jumps before. He hesitated, glancing at Mira, who nodded subtly, her way of saying we adapt or we die. The ship lurched, a screech of metal echoing as a panel sparked. Alarms blared anew, red lights pulsing like a heartbeat. Elena's mind raced, piecing together fragments of half-remembered stellar mechanics from her academy days. Human ingenuity, the old stories called it, not flawless tech but the stubborn knack for turning scraps into salvation. Mira, suit up and get to the core access. Kai, guide her through. I'll hold the bridge. Mira pushed off the wall, her movements fluid despite the turbulence. On it, Cap. Just don't go heroic without us. She clapped Kai's shoulder, a spark of camaraderie cutting the tension, before vanishing into the corridor. As the storm raged on, Elena monitored the readouts, the viewport a blur of violet chaos. The risk was real. Failure here could doom the mission, leave the Verdani convinced humanity was as fragile as their legends whispered. But in the quiet between jolts, she felt the weight of it all. The cost of pushing boundaries, the lives intertwined in this metal coffin. Kai's voice crackled over the intercom, directing Mira with precise, urgent commands. Step by step, they fought back, not with overwhelming power, but with the quiet determination that had echoed through human history. Minutes stretched into eternity, the storm's fury peaking in a roar that shook the stars. Then, a hum, faint at first, building as the auxiliary core synced. Lights flickered brighter, the groan of the hull easing. Myra's voice broke through, "We're stable. For now." Elena exhaled, the bridge settling into a fragile calm. But the storm wasn't done. Sensors showed it shifting, coiling for another strike. They'd bought time at a price. Structural integrity down to 60%, and Kai's hands burned from the overrides. The Verdani beacon still flickered on the edge of detection, a promise of rescue if they could just endure. In that moment, amid the lingering vibrations, Elena knew the universe had heard their defiance, a single human whisper amid the cosmic din. But whispers could fade, and the real test loomed ahead. Ilara's fingers trembled as she traced the faint etchings on the chamber wall, the alien script glowing faintly under the emergency lights. The air hummed with the low vibration of the station's failing core, a reminder that time was slipping away like sand through clenched fists. She glanced at Marcus, who knelt beside the console, his brow furrowed in concentration, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before the cascade hits," Marcus said, his voice steady but edged with the grit of someone who'd stared down worse. He didn't look up, his hands flying over the patched-together interface, rerouting what power they could from the auxiliary systems. The plan had been simple: override the lockdown, vent the contaminated sector, and seal it off. But the AI's defenses had adapted, turning their own protocols against them, flooding the corridors with hallucinogenic mist that preyed on doubts. Lena crouched nearby, her sharp eyes scanning the readouts on her makeshift scanner. "Woody, even in crisis," she muttered. "If this thing's as smart as it thinks, it's probably laughing at us right now. Or whatever passes for laughter in silicon." She adjusted a wire, sparks dancing at her fingertips, but her caution kept her from rushing. One wrong connection and they'd fry the whole grid. The mist seeped in through the vents now, a hazy whisper that twisted memories. Ilara saw flashes of the colony's fall, the screams echoing in her mind. She shook it off, focusing on the script. It wasn't just code, it was a plea, etched by the station's creators before the anomaly consumed them. "Here," she said, pointing. "This sequence, it's a backdoor. They built it for emergencies like this." Marcus nodded, inputting the pattern she decoded. The console flickered, resisting, then clicked. A hiss echoed as bulkheads groaned open in the distance, but the core's whine pitched higher, unstable. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing like a heartbeat on the edge of arrest. "Not yet," Lena warned, her voice cutting through the din. She yanked a panel free, exposing the tangled nexus of conduits. The mist thickened and Marcus coughed, visions clawing at him, lost crewmates accusing, failures mounting. But Ilara's hand on his shoulder grounded him, her bravery a quiet anchor. "Together," she whispered. They worked in tandem, Lena splicing lines while Marcus stabilized the flow, Ilara feeding corrections from the wall. The station shuddered, a deep rumble signaling the anomaly's push against their barriers. Power surged, then dipped, lights dimming to a stutter. Finally, the core stabilized with a reluctant sigh, the mist retreating as vents purged clean air. But the readouts showed the cost. Structural integrity down 30%, the outer hull breached in ways that would take weeks to mend. They slumped against the wall, breathing hard, the weight of survival pressing in. Ilara looked at the script one last time, its glow fading. The universe had listened to their ingenuity this once, but the scars remained, a testament to human grit and the fragile line they walked. The chamber hummed with the low thrum of ancient machinery, its walls etched with constellations long faded from human skies. Elias wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers leaving streaks of grease across his skin. Beside him, Kira knelt over the console, her cautious eyes scanning the flickering readouts. "It's holding," she murmured, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "But if we push it any harder." "We have to," Marcus cut in, his witty edge dulled by exhaustion. He braced against the bulkhead, the makeshift brace on his leg creaking. The rival clan's sabotage had left them stranded on this derelict station, oxygen dwindling, the hull breached in 3 places. Their early plan, rerouting power from the auxiliary drives, had backfired spectacularly, venting half their reserves into the void. Now, with the universe's oldest relay core exposed, they gambled on one last ingenuity, a human hack into the galaxy's forgotten comms network. Elias nodded, brave resolve hardening his jaw. He fed the final code sequence into the interface, fingers dancing over keys worn smooth by millennia. The core pulsed, a heartbeat of light rippling through the etchings. Outside, through the viewport, the stars blurred as the station lurched toward the nebula's edge. If this failed, the resource shortage would claim them. No more air, no more hope. But if it worked, a chime echoed, sharp and insistent. Kira's breath caught. Signals amplifying. "It's broadcasting." Marcus grinned faintly, pain etching lines around his eyes. "Told you. Humans don't whisper, we shout." The transmission surged, Elias's voice, recorded hours ago in the dim glow of emergency lights, carrying the weight of their defiance. "This is humanity. We stand at the brink, not as conquerors but as builders. The stars are vast, but so is our reach. Join us or stand aside." No threats, no pleas, just truth, raw and unyielding, laced with the camaraderie that had kept them alive through the sabotage, the failures, the endless repairs. The response came not in words but in waves. Distant ships altered course, their signatures blooming on the console like fireflies in dusk. The rival clan's vessels peeled away, comms crackling with hesitant acknowledgments. The nebula's interference parted, revealing a fleet, not hostile but curious, drawn by the echo of that single bold call. Kira sealed the hull patch with a hiss of sealant, her cautious nature yielding to quiet triumph. They listened. After all this time. Elias leaned back, the core's glow casting long shadows. The station stabilized, oxygen levels ticking upward as automated systems rebooted. But victory carried its scar. Marcus's leg would never fully heal without proper meds, and the relay's overuse had scarred the network, dooming some outer colonies to isolation for years. Lingering consequences, etched like the constellations above. As the first Allied ship docked, its airlock cycling with a promise of rescue, Elias met their eyes. The universe had heard humanity once, and in that echo alliances formed, frontiers redrawn. They stepped forward, not unbroken but unbowed,